And you know what? I'm going to digress here just for a minute because Jason asked me about this, and we might as well go into it for a minute. Maybe this will be a whole nother, what did we say we're going to call it? To belt or not to belt? That is the question. Okay, so remember we were talking about people building stuff to sell? We were talking about chassis being easier to build than, say, Macmillan-style hand-laid type stocks. Or the carbon fiber, I would definitely say, is not easier, but they're making, they're getting over $1,000 a barrel for it. The point is, making things that the market wants for the express purpose of selling it. And I'm not saying it may be an advancement or it may not be, but people will still produce things if it'll sell, whether it's an advancement or not. I mean, you really, seriously, you guys are going to really laugh about this. You tell me that those crappy phones we have right now are one bit better than the phone that was on the wall. Okay, I'm sorry, it's not. Those things are to sell. And plus, they know everything you say and everywhere you go. So if you like that, that's up to you. I'd rather have the phone on the wall, okay? It wasn't an advancement, in my opinion. I mean, but I'd be riding a horse rather than driving a car. But that's beside the point.
Somehow I see his blood pressure going up.
Yes, exactly. It bothers me that people create things and build things to sell rather than to advance humanity. Sure. You know what I'm saying? Like if I come up with some great idea and it's like, oh my gosh, this cures cancer, makes it so little kids don't have to have braces. It's like, okay, and I get rich from it, I'm fine with that. Because it's like, it benefits everybody. But if you build something just for the purpose of making your bank account bigger, I don't admire that, okay? You get where I'm coming from? All right, so here's the thing. Belted or not belted? Obviously, this 30 nozzler is a non-belted cartridge, right? I'm sure everybody knows that. No belt, right? And 300 Winchester and 7 mag and 338 Win Mag, those are all belted cartridges, right? All of those cartridges originated in the early 60s. Now, what do we have that's not belted? We have the 6.5 PRC, the 7 PRC, 300 PRC, 30 nozzler, 28 nozzler, blah, 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 blah. We have so many of them, right? That's the big deal now, non-belted. And if you're just an average guy, and this is where this came from, because he knows about shooting, but you're not a bench press level shooter. He's not a competitive shooter. So what do you have to be able to gain information? Well, you have the internet. Oh my God. All the people on the internet are nuts. Okay? So you have that. You might get real information there. You might not, right? But where does most people, you at least used to, out of magazines, right? Okay, now a lot of people don't realize this. Back when you had Jack O'Connor or Elmer Keith or Jim Carmichael, Ross Seafried, those guys, they were knowledgeable shooters. Warren Page, they were knowledgeable shooters. And so they didn't take a press release from a company that has a new product that they're trying to sell, rewrite the press release, and put it in the magazine so that all the guys could sit out there and read it and say, oh, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread, I got to have it, okay? Pretty much that's what's going on in the last 10 years. So all those new cartridges that I talked about that are non-belted, some of them are really good cartridges, like the 38 and 28 nozzler are really good cartridges. They're very accurate, good brass. I mean, there's a lot of advantages. But in those magazine articles, the writer always makes an attempt to try to explain why that non-belted has some kind of advantage, right? It's always kind of, it's like a nebulous thing. It's like, I'm not quite sure what he's trying to say. You know why? It's because he doesn't know what he's trying to say, because he never built a gun probably. There is no advantage. I got to be really careful how I word this. They're assuming that you have good quality brass, assuming that your reamers, that is your dummy rounds, are set up properly, and then the reamer matches your dummy rounds. There is no advantage at all to non-belted over belted. Not if they're set up properly. Now, if they're SAMI spec and it's just factory ammo, the non-belted stuff might have an advantage. Because I want to explain something to you. And do you have anything I can use this to point?
Yep.
So come and look at this. I mean, everybody knows what belted is, right? It's got an actual belt that goes the whole way around there. The thing about this belt is it is the strongest part of the case, and it is immovable, okay? It is immovable, and I'm comparing that to, say, by the way, I don't want to get too deep. That's the datum line. This is what this headspace is off of. This cartridge headspace is off of the leading edge of this belt. So from the cartridge head, the face of this, or the face of the bolt, which it'll be up against, to this solid, immovable object right there, the leading edge of the belt, that is the headspace. So the headspace is between here and here. All right. On non-belted cases, it can actually be at any point on the case. There can be any datum line depending on the cartridge. But on a case like this, it's the shoulder, right? It's here, the shoulder. All right. Shoulders are, what should we say? Malleable, I guess, right? Shoulders are malleable. You can move a shoulder. You can crush a shoulder. You can compress the shoulder. You can bump the shoulder half a thou, maybe even a thou and a half, maybe even two. But at some point, if you try to put too much pressure on the shoulder, it's going to bulge the case radially, right? The deal is, though, cartridges that headspace on the shoulder, I would say, none of this is specific language, are more forgiving, right? It's a somewhat more forgiving, where a belt, and then way back when they started, like this is from, I think from 375 H&H is where this started. A belt, the whole idea was that it was an immovable object. In other words, once this belt hits the recess in the chamber, it comes up against there, and that's it. It's not moving forward. Right. You understand? It can't, right? It cannot move forward. All right, now, here's the problem. With most belted cartridges, the reamers that chamber the guns have excess headspace here. Okay, not here. So it wouldn't even be termed headspace. What we're saying is the reamer is actually a little longer up to where the shoulder should be than what it needs to be. And again, I'm not explaining this well. I'm really not. And it's not a hard concept. The idea is the belt keeps it from going any deeper into it. But the actual chamber, lengthwise, is usually deeper than where the actual shoulder is. Okay, so you put it in the gun, it comes up against the belt, the firing pin hits it, it can't move forward. Okay, that's an actual positive thing, because it's a very, very defined, the headspace is very defined, it can't move, all right? So then what happens is the cartridge goes off and it generally blows the shoulder forward. It'll blow it out and forward a little bit. Now, there's no problem with that in any way, shape, or form, okay? The thing about it is, because it's a really popular SAMI cartridge, most of the dies you're gonna buy, say you just go buy a $30 set of RCBS full-length dies. When you run it in that die, it's going to take that shoulder and push it back to almost maybe to where it was original, or even shorter than original. So what you end up having happen is the cartridge is truly head spacing off the belt every single time. All right. Well, that doesn't do anything good for accuracy. It's kind of like an adage that I say: if you're steering from the rear, you're going to give up accuracy. You want to be steering from the front. And again, I can't go into all that. But when you're relying on the belt all the time, in other words, that is your stop, it's not the best system in the world. All you have to do, though, to have that not occur is not resize, don't push the shoulder back. In other words, the shoulder should only be moved enough to go back into the gun. And a lot of times with my tight neck guns, with these minimum spec reamers, you can fire the same piece of brass 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times. It's head spacing, yes, off of the belt, but the shoulder It's a belted cartridge that is acting like a non-belted cartridge. So essentially, there's no downside to it, right? It's not that non-belted is more accurate than belted. That is a giant misnomer, but all of these brand new cartridges, when you see the article in the magazine, they'll be like, well, it's non-belted, so therefore it's inherently more accurate, or a whole bunch of different stuff. That is only true. It is only true with if it's SAMI spec factory guns. There is some truth to it then. But if it's a custom-made gun, and the reamer was made to fit the brass, and the reamer was made so that this shoulder doesn't blow forward. In other words, the actual chamber, the reamer that made it, the actual chamber very much resembles the cartridge. So there's not a bunch of excess to blow that shoulder forward. You never run into any problems, really. You can, like I said, I've built many 300 Winchesters that shoot like bench rest guns. And so the magazines will tell you, well, no, that's not possible, that this non-belted case should have an advantage, but it doesn't. And I didn't explain that very well, but the deal is you were somewhat concerned. Mm-hmm. In other words, like out in the shooting world with less experienced people, they're like, oh boy, should I go belted or non-belted? If the gun is built properly with proper reamers and proper chambers, it's not even something to consider. I would before I would consider belted to non-belted, I would consider brass quality. So, like now, they make Lapua makes 300 Winchester Lapua brass. So if I had to choose between building a belted 300 Winchester with Lapua brass, or I don't want to say, because I don't want to pick on anybody, because anybody can have good or bad brass, but say it was another cartridge that was non-belted. Say it was a 300 PRC, but it was low quality brass. That's what we'll say. I would definitely go with the belted. I would go with the higher quality brass any day of the week. Quality is quality. It doesn't matter. The belt, what I'm saying is the belt is not inherently a positive or negative feature. And it could almost be, say you weren't super caring about accuracy and stuff. It was mostly about. You see what I'm saying? All right, so let's go back to that now.
Okay, you were talking about the belt.
Oh yeah, the belt, right. The camera went dead, sorry. So the belt, there is one advantage to a belt, and that's why they were originally designed. Say you're going to Africa, or you're going dangerous game hunting. Having a belt can be a really good idea. And let's just say it has nothing to do with accuracy. You're only going to shoot 100, 200 yards. Having a belt that gives you an absolute positive headspace every single time, and the cartridge cannot go deeper into the chamber, can be a good and positive thing. And that's one of the reasons why they were invented. Now, but here's something I have to say about belts. And I believe I told you this on the phone. People, novices, non-experts, think that all 30-06s are the same, all 270s are the same, they think the brass is the same, the loaded ammo is the same, the chambers are the same. There's nothing that could be further from the truth than that. And all I'm talking about now is discrepancies. So in belts, in other words, from here to here, the greatest discrepancy I ever saw, and I think it was in the same lot number of brass, on a belt was 12 thousandths. And I remember that pretty vividly. 12 thousandths. So if you're trying to headspace a gun to within 1 thou or less, 12 thou is huge. And what that means is, and see, this is where it gets kind of funky. If you headspaced it off the piece of brass that was 12 thousandths bigger, then it would take all of the other smaller cartridges. It would accept them all, but there would be excess headspace, so it's not going to shoot. It'll shoot, hopefully it'll go bang, because you realize when the firing pin hits, if the cartridge moves ahead, it uses up some energy. Whole nother subject. If there's 12 thou and you chamber it to the biggest, it'll take all the small ammo. But if you chambered it to the smallest, and you didn't know that in that batch of brass or in that loaded ammo, there was one in there with a belt that was 12 thousandths bigger, and a Cape Buffalo's running at you, and you try to chamber that round, it wouldn't matter if you had a sledgehammer, it's not going in.
Right.
It's not going in. Where if you had a cartridge that headspaced on the shoulder, just with sheer physical force, you couldn't crush it with your hand by 12, no way. But you might be able to crush one for sure, two probably, three maybe. By the time you got to 5, you'd have to be Bruno Sammartino to be able to get that to go in there, okay? And if you don't know who Bruno Sammartino is, you need to look it up, because he was a genuine tough guy, a real deal. I love Bruno Sammartino. You know who that is?
No, I don't.
Oh my God, he was the world, when they really wrestled, he was the world record, world heavyweight belt holder. He died right down the road from my friend Ann. I'm talking like, his son was her paper boy. And I actually got to go down there, and this man, he swore that he hated steroids. Okay, but you have to see this man. His forearms are as big as most people's legs. Okay, he looks like a gorilla. You know what I mean? But I remember reading an article that said one time he just walked in some gym somewhere, and I think they had 350 pounds on the bench press. And somebody said to him, "How many can you do?" And he said, "I don't know, let's find out." And he laid down there on a flat bench with no help, no suit, no wraps, no nothing. And I think he did like 50 reps. And then he said, "I'm getting tired." And he set it down and got up and walked out. Okay, that's how powerful a man this guy was. So anyways, maybe Bruno could cram one in there with 5 thou over. The point is, head spacing on a belted cartridge may actually be more important than on a head spacing on a shouldered cartridge. But people, all this whole discussion is simply foolishness. Because say you're going to shoot factory ammo. If you're going to shoot factory ammo and you're going to go on any hunt that matters, you should chamber every single one of them. Chamber every one of them to see that they actually go in the gun, right? If it's hand loads, it's the same thing. You should take all your brass. Before I load it, I take all my brass, run it in, make sure it's actually going to go. All of these issues we're talking about would go away if there was such a thing as perfect brass. In other words, perfect brass matched to perfect dreamers, cut perfect chambers. This would all be moot. It wouldn't even matter. The reason it does matter is, and you must understand this, none of it is uniform. The very, very best stuff you can buy is not uniform. So what you're always trying to do is you're trying to put it all in your favor. In other words, make all those tolerances work in your favor rather than against you. Now, I got to stop on there. We still haven't decided what cartridge this gun is going to be. What we have to do now, though, is I realized, but I didn't realize. So, okay, let's just start right here. So this bat receiver, which is their machining is awesome. Okay, I think it's sacrilegious that they cut all this metal away, but it's beautiful, okay? It's beautiful. But these receivers, all the HRs, VRs, TRs, all those, it measures 1.350 inch, okay? 1.350 in diameter. All right. Now, I looked down here and I realized, wait a second, that looks small. So you got to realize this is the breech, right? This is the chamber end. This measures 1.2 inch. I have not used an 1.2 inch barrel in this shop, I'll bet you in
Ever?
15 years maybe. Only before I got clued in. You know what I mean? I'm like, I'm not doing that, because this measures inch 200, that measures inch 350. You realize you have to turn this down, a tenon. You have to turn a tenon on it so that this will fit in there before you thread it. And the whole deal is the shoulder. The shoulder is the single most important thing. It's more important than threads, all the other stuff. Because when this comes up against that, it has to literally lock up and essentially make them one unit. Because I think it's Harold Vaughn. Again, I'm getting in so deep. You guys won't know this stuff. Go back and read some of Harold Vaughn's stuff. He did unlimited experiments, and his number one detractor of accuracy was the joint. That was his conclusion. The joint itself, where this barrel bumps into that receiver, and also how the lug hits into the lug mortise, which normally it's bedded, that was it. That was where accuracy was. That was all this right here. So, if you put a small diameter breech against an inch 350 receiver, you have given up a whole bunch of contact area. Okay, so that's that barrel. Now we were looking what barrels we brought up here. So here, this is, look, this is an inch 250 barrel. This is a Bartlett. Now guys, listen to this, because I got the same deal. I have to choose my words so carefully. I built many, many guns on inch 250 barrels. And they're out there. Guys have them. Some of the guys think they're the most accurate guns that I mean, they think Jesus came in here and made them. Okay? But that's not what it was. They were great barrels. All right? They were great barrels, but they were inch 250 barrels. As time went on, we started to see something. When I went to inch 300, there was a trend getting more accurate. And then when I went to inch 325, and I've gone the whole way up to inch 350. That gun that's right over there is a 6XC, and it has a inch 325 barrel on it. The whole idea of going to bigger breeches was to get more shoulder receiver face contact. Okay? All I can tell you is that as we did that, we saw a trend of increased accuracy. And I would say less flyers, less unexplained flyers. Now, can I say for absolutely certain that's the reason? Nope. And I don't even know how you'd run that experiment. You'd have to be a multi-gazillionaire. But I prefer to use a barrel that mates up 100% with the receiver as close as possible. Now, here's the issue. So everybody's going to be like, well, but as you get bigger in the breech, you're going to get heavier. Yes, that's absolutely true. It's going to get heavier. So we've really, I'd say lately, Vicki, you need to speak because you're there. We've ordered more inch 300 barrels than probably any other barrel in the last few years, right?
Yes.
And then inch 325.
Inch 325 on specific guns. But
Talk loud.
Mostly inch 300, yes.
Yes, inch 300 is probably our standard dimension now, then inch 325, and then if it's bench gun, say it's a really serious bench gun, I will go inch 350, really, we go inch 345, because you got to get it perfect, I'll say that. All right, so this is going to be the next thing, and what we also noticed here is, remember that's a 1 in 9, these barrels that are more appropriate are,
It's 1 in 11.
Or what's this one again? This is a 1 in 11 2.5.
This is 193.
1 in 11 what?
This is 193. 1.
Oh, that's for the 245.
Yeah.
So is this the only one? Do we have another one that's, what's this? What are these? Oh, these are, what was this one?
That's a number 15, Bartlett.
So this is a 1 in 11. So we have other choices.